If you want to be successful, you have to stop listening to yourself. Let me explain what I mean by that. I'm a psychology professor, and I spend a lot of time in my classes teaching my students how they can use psychological science to improve their lives. We talk about things like how to change bad habits, or how to successfully set up goals to pursue, or why it's important to do things in our lives that we're passionate about. And when we talk about these things, interestingly, rather than experience excitement, a lot of students actually experience negative thoughts and feelings. Rather than getting excited about doing things they're passionate about, they say to themselves, I could never do that. I'm afraid that if I tried, I'd fail. Maybe these sorts of thoughts resonate with you. Maybe you've had experiences in the past where you've thought to yourself, I'd love to start a business, but I don't have what it takes. Or I'd love to go to graduate school, but I'm not smart enough. Or I'd go on a diet, but I just don't have the self-control to be successful. Or maybe even I'd love to approach that attractive person across the bar, but they wouldn't want to talk to me. When we think about doing things that are exciting, but often require us to go outside our comfort zones, one of the very first things we experience is negative thoughts and feelings. And why is that? Well, what it ultimately comes down to is evolution. We are biologically wired to pay attention to things in our environment that we perceive as threats. And like I said, this goes back to our evolutionary past. If our evolutionary ancestors went a couple days without food, they were probably okay. On the other hand, if they didn't pay attention to that saber-toothed tiger lurking around the corner, they might be dead, life over, no opportunity to pass on their genes. And because of that, our ancestors who actually paid more attention to possible threats were more likely to survive and more likely to pass on their genes, which we now have. So even today, when a lot of the threats that were present back then are nowhere to be found, we are still wired to pay attention to anything in our environment that we might perceive as a threat. And interestingly, that doesn't have to be a real threat. Let me give you an example. Maybe I go on a diet and for a few days I eat very low calorie, and as a result, I'm cranky and I'm hungry and I'm not feeling real good. Okay? Now, not only is my mind going to associate the diet, the low calories with negative thoughts and feelings, but I also have the ability to associate the word diet with that experience. So now simply thinking about a diet is enough to produce negative thoughts and feelings. And that's exactly what happens when we start thinking about things like going after our goals or doing things we're passionate about, which might require us to step outside our comfort zone. Our minds and bodies are simply trying to protect us. When we step outside our comfort zone, they scream, no, you're safe. Why would you step outside your comfort zone? Get back to safety. Okay? So when I'm on a diet and my mind is telling me, hey, skip the healthy meal and just eat pizza, all it's trying to do is protect me. It's basically saying, wait a minute, going without food for a long period of time isn't going to help our survival. Get food now. Or if you see that attractive person across the bar, your mind is going, wait, that person might reject you, and being socially rejected is a bad thing. Stay away. So when we do these things that require us to step outside our comfort zone, even though they might benefit us in the long term, even though they might actually help us succeed, our minds are telling us stay away. It's discomfort. It's not good. Something might go wrong. Okay? So clearly, if we are paying attention to these negative thoughts, they're probably not going to help us get to where we want to go. So how do we get over this? Well, what we need to learn to do is pay attention to thoughts and feelings that are useful, and we need to learn to ignore those thoughts and feelings that are not. So, for example, if I'm on a diet and my mind is telling me to eat pizza, well, that's probably not a useful thought in terms of getting me to my longer-term goal of being healthy. Or if I'm in a bar and I see that person across the bar and I want to approach them and my mind is telling me, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Well, that's probably not going to help me get to my longer term goal of meeting somebody, establishing a connection, and maybe getting into a relationship. So we need to become more aware of when our thoughts are useful and when they're not. And how do we do this? Well, one of the best ways to do this is to become more mindful. And one of the best ways to become more mindful is to meditate. Even a few minutes a day teaches us how to become more in tune with our inner thoughts and feelings. And when we become more in tune with our inner thoughts and feelings, we can catch them when they're happening. We can stop for a second. We can ask ourselves, wait a minute, are these thoughts and feelings useful or not? And then based on the answer to that question, we can decide whether we want to pay attention to them. So if a thought is useful, then even if it doesn't necessarily make us feel good, we can listen to that thought and we can move forward knowing that that's probably going to get us closer to our longer term goals. On the other hand, if a thought isn't useful, we can catch ourselves. We can even thank our minds for trying to keep us safe. But then we can say, I think I'm going to ignore you for now and instead do something that's going to get me closer to who I ultimately want to be and where I want to be. Okay? So hopefully you can see here what I mean by if you want to be successful, you have to stop listening to yourself. What I actually mean is if you want to be successful, you have to start selectively listening to yourself. If the thoughts that arise in a situation are useful, pay attention. And by all means, move forward because you know that those thoughts and feelings are going to help you get where you want to be. On the other hand, if your thoughts and feelings aren't useful, then what we need to do is stop, catch ourselves, treat them as if they're just noise in the background, and instead connect with those goals we want to accomplish, connect with the values that are most important to us, and start behaving in a way that's going to get us closer to where we want to be. So there you have it. If you want to be successful, you have to stop listening to yourself, or you have to stop listening to those negative thoughts that aren't going to help you get where you want to be. Anyway, something for you to think about. Hope you're all having a good one. As always, get out there and make good things happen.